Introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Well, it's time for Dr. McDougall, and he's going to be talking about the bovine leukemia virus. Please welcome him to the show. How come you're going to talk about that, Dr. McDougall?
Well, then I need to get to my first slide. Well, I hope I will do that. Here we go. Okay, this is today's news. Are you reading today's news? I mean, this is headlines in, the New York Times, USA Today, every newspaper you have. Today's headlines, April 2nd, 2024. So that's why I'm talking about it. I'm talking about infection from animals. In this case, we're looking at bird flu infecting a person through cattle. It's somebody who worked with cattle. And, I'm sure they ate cattle too, but, this is a real everyday thing. I guess I just needed to put this in perspective so you know that this is not something Abstract. This is important to you, what I'm going to talk to you about in the next few minutes. So listen. You have threats from all kinds of places. And one of them is from infections, from pandemics, like bird flu infecting the human population. Here, people think it started, or it certainly can happen. How about other viruses, cancer-causing viruses? Viruses that could kill you 90% of the time. Pay attention. You need to be in as good a health as possible, and to avoid some of these vectors. Vectors. They're things in between you and the virus, like the steak, or the ham, or the eggs, or the milk, or whatever. It's the animal tissues. That's the vector. So, how could it be more pertinent than April 2nd, 2024 headlines in every paper? Okay, that's why I'm talking about it. Any questions, AJ?
No, I'm just not. I don't watch the news or read the news like you do. So this is very
Well, there you go. You probably don't live in terror all day long. I live in terror. Good grief. You can't be in contact with the world's news and not be just frightened to death.
That's probably why I don't watch it.
I know, but I think it's important if you are that kind of person who wants to be aware of things, and I do. I love, this is my world, AJ. Okay, this is my time. I don't want to miss it. For good or bad, I want to at least watch and see what's going on. And if I can have an input, which I think I do in the field of food and medicine, then I want to take advantage of that. I want to be aware. And unfortunately, there's a side of what's going on that's really scary. But, a lot of this you can't control. But this you control. You have control over your food. 100% control over what you eat. So, you take control of the things you have the ability to take control over. Isn't it what they say, sort of? You realize those things you can't have control over and you move on. Anyway, you do have control over the topic that is following that we're going to talk about. I have a little bit of additional subject matter at the end too. So if you stay tuned, I will not only talk to you about infections from viruses that originally started in the animal, the lesser animal, I don't know if lesser is the right word, in the animal kingdom that people call the lesser animal kingdom. Of course, we're the higher animal kingdom, but I know that's up for debate. Anyway, they originated in wild animals and domestic animals and farm animals. And, if the animals get infected, you can imagine their tissues are infected. I know, if you cook it thoroughly, you kill those viruses, right? Yeah, well, when's the last time you had a pink steak? I used to always order them when I was back into those days. I ordered, I like it pink on the inside. Well, pink is raw. Anyways, let's get on to the topic. All right, what I want to talk to you about is I want to talk to you about bovine leukemia viruses. We could talk about lymphoma. Lymphoma is a disease. It's one of those blood-borne diseases that involves the lymph system mostly. In other words, you see swollen lymph nodes and so on. In leukemia, what you see is also a blood-borne a cancer where you have proliferation of your blood cells, primarily your white blood cells. And, your spleen gets swollen and, many other things happen. So there's a lot of cross between lymphoma and leukemias. But we're going to be talking about leukemia, which there's a lot written about, AJ. This is not something that is not beyond your ability to learn about. But good grief, you go to the National Library of Medicine and you plug in the terms bovine leukemia viruses and milk, dairy products and milk, you get 2,500 articles. I've known about this for almost 40 years. And I've thought this is a top. You can go to my May 2003 newsletter entitled Marketing Milk and Disease, or the lecture I gave in May of 2003, which is called Marketing Milk and Disease, which is on YouTube. And you can see that I was talking about this back then. I've been to various newspapers, television shows, radio shows. I've even mentioned it on a few radio shows that I've been on. I've tried to get the attention of writers that have a national presence to alert the public about what we're going to talk about today. And they're either frightened or they don't understand the implications of these viral infections. Well, I guess they're starting to. They talk about bird flu infecting cattle, which now infect people. So maybe this is going to be a topic that people are going to pay attention to. I challenge any writer, anybody who has any influence in the media, to look up what I have to say about this. I put the scientific research in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide. You can look it up. I'm giving you a majority opinion, not a minority opinion. This is what the bulk of the science says. So read it. Don't live in ignorance. And if you think it's important and you have an ability to influence people, then do it. Your friends, your relatives, people in your church organization, your schools, tell them about this. I've been using this particular topic to at least get an emotional reaction out of people for 40 years. And maybe the virus will get them to give it up and avoid a heart attack or breast cancer or colon cancer. Maybe this will get their attention. Although, this isn't as common as breast cancer or heart attacks for sure. And certainly obesity, which affects 91% of the population of the United States. They're too overfat for their health. That's what the new statistics say. Anyway, what you find is in U.S. cattle, nearly 90% of the herds, and I'm going to repeat the statistic over and over again, 90% of the herds are infected. And of these, about half of the cattle are infected in the herds. These are dairy herds, okay? This is the dairy industry. When it comes to slicing muscles off your animals and serving them to you as steaks and pork chops, and wings and limbs and whatever they sell. What we're talking about when it comes to the beef industry is nearly 40% of the herds are infected with bovine leukemia virus, and that's 10% of the cows in these herds. Once infected, they're infected for life. It's such a serious problem in the cattle industry that if you have a bull, it's up for stud, to make prize cows, you don't get hired if your bull is infected. They won't hire studs that are infected with bovine leukemia virus. So in the cattle industry, they think it's important, even though it's been ignored in the human medical industry, as you'll learn in a few minutes. It's diagnosed by blood tests. The leukemia virus, we have some crude tests, we have some very sensitive tests. And one of the things that you need to understand as we begin this topic is that bovine leukemia virus is almost identical to human leukemia virus. And they share so much in structure and metabolism that you couldn't tell the difference before 1970 with our technology at that time. And by the way, this is the virus that causes leukemia in humans that is accepted and recognized, the human leukemia virus. All right. As I told you, about 90% of the U.S. herds are infected. Well, in Canada, it's 70%, Argentina, 84%. Increasing infection rates in many countries, Argentina, Brazil, Canada, Japan, United States. You see the worldwide distribution. Red is where this virus is common. These are also the countries where heart disease is common, and breast cancer and colon cancer. Do you see the parallel here? Do you see the common denominator here? The closest contact you have with your environment is your food, ladies and gentlemen. You know, when anything varies by geography, by environment, by country, by population, if things vary, you have to ask why. And what we're talking about here is changing environments. Then you ask yourself, how do I contact my environment? Well, you do it through air, which is, you know, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, a few pollutants. Not too many molecules. No, not many. And then there's water. Yeah, you count H2O and a few pollutants. And then there's food. Tens of thousands of different kinds of molecules in a mass volume that is tremendous times greater than you get with air or water. You know, the impact of the food is really it's your environment, unless it's obvious otherwise. All right. In the production of milk, let's focus on milk here. That's most of our topic this morning. You know, you have the dairy cows, and they're milked usually 24 hours a day, 24 quarts a day. Even when they're pregnant, they milk them. That's one of the reasons you have high estrogen levels in your dairy products, which increase the estrogen in your body, which increases hormone-dependent diseases like breast cancer, uterine cancer. Yeah, well, that's a whole nother topic. Anyway, they milk the cows at the farmyard, right? And they put it in vats, and then they put the vats in trucks that have these big fluid containers on them. I guess they call those vats too, tanker trucks. And then they haul them off to a central plant. And then they take the trucks from many different farms and they dump their milk into this large vat. And they mix it all up. And what the United States Department of Agriculture reports that if you look at a vat where 500 or more cows are involved, it's infected 100% of the time. In other words, you can pretty much plan on the dairy foods that you get having this virus. Anyway, that's from your own United States Department of Agriculture, the infection rate. Now, that's the United States, okay, what I just told you about, and various other countries that make a lot of money off the dairy industry and beef industry. But, you know, there are places that have taken this, this infection seriously, like in Europe, for example. And in New Zealand, they eradicated the bovine leukemia virus from their dairy and beef herds. They did that, yes, they did. But they also did it in Finland. Took them 30 years, and by 1996, they'd killed all the infected cows. Somebody thinks this is important. This virus has been known forever. You know, ever since they found it and started studying it, it's been known to cross species lines. In other words, the cow virus, the bovine leukemia virus, will infect sheep, goats, and chimpanzees, and a bunch of other animals. Cross the species lines. I was doing a show in Atlanta one time, selling books. And I met some researchers from Emory University. And I started talking about this subject in the green room. And they said, you know, we did that research in our lab. And what we found was that by injecting the virus, we didn't get as many cases of leukemia in our animals as by feeding it by mouth. Somehow it seems to be more infectious when you drink it as opposed to giving it by shots. Anyway, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's what I was told. But the way that it's spread is by the way we practice on our farmyards, common farming practices. One of the most concerning, if you want to get the attention of family families, mothers, even fathers, anybody who has children or grandchildren or cares about children, you'll want to pay attention to this study. You can look it up in Cancer Research, 1974. They took two groups of chimpanzees. One was the control group. They didn't give them infected milk. 6 chimpanzees. They all survived. They're all alive at the end of a year. And then they gave another 6 chimpanzees. They gave them infected milk. 2 died of leukemia before the end of the year. I know some of you object to doing animal experiments, and I certainly understand that. But this ought to get you off your chair and looking up the study, I would think. Spreading the virus, well, there are various ways. There's farming practices that, are done today in pretty much every farm. And they are, tattooing the animals, and they use tattoo needles. They don't change the needles between tattooings. The needles on the syringes, they don't change them. They go from cow to cow to cow, injecting antibiotics and hormones and other things in the animals. They dehorn with the same instrument, and that spreads the infection. They do rectal probes on these animals. In other words, they don't change their gloves between rectal probes, and they spread it that way. It's spread from mother cow to calf. And then they have a practice of taking the early milk of the pregnant cows. They're called colostrum, and they mix that all together, and they feed this pooled colostrum to all the calves, and they spread it that way. As far as spreading disease in the farmyards and other areas of processing of the animal foods, this was brought to everybody's attention in April of 1996 when Howard Lyman, the mad cowboy, appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show. He talked about mad cow disease at that particular discussion. It was the second time mad cow had been talked about on a national show. The first time was on a show called Lifestyle Magazine, which I was co-host of. We talked about that in 1993, mad cow disease. But this is the second time I'd heard about it on the Oprah Show. And what Howard did is he explained to Oprah about common farming practices. And one of those is to take dying and dead cattle, called downers, and grinding them up and putting them in with the rest of the cattle feed. So the certain amount of the cattle feed, maybe 10%, 15%, would be dead animals. In other words, they turned herbivorous animals into omnivores or carnivores. Anyway, Oprah heard this, that they were feeding dead and dying cattle to the live cattle, and that's what she was eating on her dinner plate. She said, "I'll never have another hamburger again." In the national cattle industry, they sued her in Texas, and they lost. Oprah won, Howard won. But it left, I think, a lifelong impression on Oprah, because she really has not taken up this topic seriously in the time since then, as far as I've been able to see. The topic of diet. Yeah, drugs, yes. Diet, no. Anyway, that's what she said. Well, the people in the cattle industry, they heard this. And they said, look, we're decent human beings, just like everybody else. We got to do something about this. This sounds like a foolish thing to do. I don't know whether they went that far. But anyway, what they decided to do is they decided that they were going to make it an official recommendation within the industry. This didn't come from government. This was in the industry, to ban feeding dying and dead cows to live cows. And they stopped doing that in 1997. But they continued some other practices you might want to know about, and these were reported first in June of 2003 in USA Today. But this goes on today. The things I'm telling you about are happening today. What they do is they take the dead and dying cows and they feed them chickens and pigs. And then they take the floor sweepings from the chicken and pig pens, and they compress them into tablets, and they feed them to the live cows. You just imagine a chicken out there chewing on this combination meal and spilling a little bit out of their lips and pooping the rest out of their bottoms. And hey, making tablets out of that. There's also the waste plate exemption, which means that if you go to a restaurant and order a tri-tip, I know none of you ever will, but your friends and family still do. If you don't finish it, they will take the leftover and they'll put it in a special basket. It's the waste plate exemption, and they can feed that to live cows. Dead and dying cows are a source of food for the pet industry. So they make up a lot of pet food. And, there are unethical cattle farmers that feed pet food to their cattle. And when you go to a slaughterhouse, you don't waste anything. And what they do is they take the blood, you got to drain the blood out of the animal after you slit its jugular veins. You take the blood and you turn that into a formula for the calves that spreads the virus. And they say, look, you can't do anything about this. It's just too economically unwise to kill all these cows. You're talking about 90% of the herds in our country. Well, other countries did it. They did it in Europe, Finland, New Zealand. Worldwide and nationwide, you find the incidence of human leukemia parallels the consumption of dairy. In other words, the more dairy is consumed in a population, the higher incidence of leukemia and lymphomas. People who work closely with farm animals, like farmers, veterinarians, butchers, they have a higher incidence of leukemia than the general population. Incriminating. How common is leukemia? Well, every year in the US, maybe 60,000 people develop leukemia. And some of them die of it, 23,000 die of it, 24,000. Leukemias are more common in children, but you see them throughout adulthood. Lymphomas are more common in adults, but they occur in younger people too. That's human leukemia. This is the incidence of human leukemia. And when you go to the doctor and you ask, what gave this horrible disease to my granddaughter or my daughter or my grandpa? Why does he have lymphoma? Why? Tell me why. Well, the standard and only acceptable answer in my business is, we don't know the cause. It's unknown. If you say otherwise, I have no doubt that you'll be looked at with some criticism by a lot of the people in the medical business. Well, actually, most of them don't know or don't care. But those who have learned this pat answer, when you ask a question, what causes this, what causes that? Well, we just don't know. Well, we could know if we took the trouble to learn the facts and to get some of our biases off the table, like our dinner plate of bacon and eggs. We could, as medical doctors, tell you we just don't know. We don't know because we haven't looked. It's not that it's not known, just we haven't looked. Or if we've looked, we decided we're not going to accept this answer. Many of you have kitty cats, yeah. And when you take your kitty cat to the veterinarian, the veterinarian recommends a annual feline leukemia virus vaccine. In other words, veterinarians know that leukemia can be caused by a virus. UC Berkeley, a few years back, a department that is still there. They're still doing research, still publishing to date on what I'm going to talk to you about right now. Nothing's changed. Is what they did is they went out on the streets of Berkeley and they asked about 250 people to give them a sample of blood randomly. Just pick people off the street. And they took it back and they examined their blood. Well, as they say in this paper, we didn't find bovine leukemia viruses when we looked prior to 1970s because of our crude technology. They said right there in their paper, based on the failure experiments in the 1970s. But then we had immunofluorescence technology developed. It's called immunoblotting, which is 100 times more sensitive and more specific. So we could detect more reliably the presence of infection. And in this particular case, they started looking for antibodies, not the actual virus, but antibodies that tell the researchers that the virus had been in the person's body. Could have been in there dead. In other words, cooked virus from steak, sure could have been. But remember that I want a pink on the inside order that so many people make. That just, you understand. Anyway, they found 74% of the samples tested were positive for antibodies to bovine leukemia virus. You know, fortunately, the human being is pretty tough, and it doesn't translate into everybody getting leukemia. Now, I showed you the rates in the last slides. So you say, well, you know, these are just antibodies. It could be from cooked steak, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this group, they took 95 women from Kaiser Permanente, asked them for their blood. And what they found is that a third of them had live viruses in their cells. And there's other research done from different parts of the world that show a similar finding. Colombia, 41%, Australia, 61%, et cetera. About a third of people are infected with live viruses that we can detect, bovine leukemia viruses. Well, you say, okay, that's no problem because we have pasteurization. You know, we heat that milk for 20 minutes at least. It kills everything. You don't have to worry about it. Based on what? I mean, how much research would you like to have to decide it's safe to feed your family dairy? Would you accept 23 studies, 23 experimental settings where they took cows infected with bovine leukemia virus and injected the virus into sheep? 23 pairs. That's it. That's all the research I can find. And what they found is in those that they gave the unpasteurized milk to, they got leukemia. But those that get pasteurized milk, they didn't. But there are only 23 cows and sheep pairs that were tested. That's it. It's not enough for me. You know, we could spend millions of dollars on testing statin drugs. Why can't we spend more than 23 cow sheep pairings that were done back in the 80s and 70s? Maybe they don't care. And pasteurization, well, you know, we got a couple issues here. One is that pasteurization sometimes fails and you get unpasteurized, you know, milk going into the bottle. But how about those people who don't believe in pasteurized milk? Those who drink raw milk? Well, in a study between the years 1998 and 2011, raw milk was, well, let's say raw milks, the infections due to raw milk, 79% of them were caused by consuming dairy products of the infections that they found between those years. If you look at farm families, okay, you look at people who live on a farm and make their living by being farmers, they are more likely to be in contact with raw milk. And what you find is somewhere between 35 and 60% of the farming families have consumed raw milk. And currently 3.5% have had raw milk in the last 7 days when they did the survey. The virus, you say, okay, how about we have this virus, it's intact. It's called an RNA virus. It's a retrovirus. involved in protein synthesis from genetic material and the production of, well, anyway, DNA to RNA, et cetera. So what happens when you heat this genetic material? It's broken up into fragments. Okay, they're called RNA-derived fragments. And what they find is these fragments are involved in cancer cell proliferation, metastases, progression, and survival. So actually, it's been brought up the fact that these fragments may be more deleterious than the whole virus because they fit into our own genetic material. That's the way they function. They're incorporated into our genes. So what should you do? Well, you should resist the temptation to pour your child a tall, cool glass of leukemia virus or its fragments. All right, I want to talk to you about just another thing, just to kind of lighten things up a little bit. I have another passion in life, and it's resulted in a website I produced called Diet and Climate. It's about diet and climate. And it's the website link is McDougallFoundation.org. Okay, McDougallFoundation.org. And I'd like you to go there because it's Mary's and my effort, along with Heather's tremendous help, to share with you how to change your diet to contribute to the salvation of our planet. But there's one other way that we have to act. I mean, cleaning up the carbon, transportation, electric cars, sun power, et cetera. I mean, that's all really important, and changing diet's really important. But we've blown past the limits of temperature and CO2 in the atmosphere. That's not going to be enough, folks. And researchers know that. You read it in the paper all the time. But we have to do something. And something that's recommended is geoengineering. But what's recommended is like putting mirrors up towards the sun and blocking out the radiation from the sun. Reflect the sunlight back with geoengineering. And another big effort that just came out this week in the New York Times is to do carbon capture. This is one of the worst jokes on the human population, carbon. Can you imagine building machines that in any way can compete with trees? Can you imagine what it would cost to capture this carbon? It's just completely impractical. An article here just recently, February 28th, on how what we need to do is we need to get thousands of ships out there in the sea and spray seawater up into the clouds to make them thicker. Well, all this kind of atmospheric intervention, well, scientists are concerned that we're going to cause some hazards that are going to hurry up our extinction from planet Earth. But I'm going to show you what I believe is our only hope, our last best hope. And some of you are going to listen. And who knows, maybe somebody of enough influence to bring this to attention of the population, of the whole population of this planet, will bring what I'm going to show you in the next slide to the attention of people that can make a meaningful difference. Not that you can't, because you can. You know, it always begins with one person and then it spreads. So that's why I'm showing this to you, is that I believe there's a way that we can salvage at least somewhat of a future. And that's to go to this website. It's meer.org, MEER.org. Yi Tao, who I know pretty well, is the brilliant investigator that's behind all this. This is a volunteer organization. Volunteer organization. Why? Because you can't make money doing what I'm going to tell you right now. Or at least nobody's figured out a way to make money. And that is Yi Tao has put together a program well detailed in science. I mean, solid science. This guy's brilliant. Where you take the waste from our garbage dumps, particularly the plastic bottles and aluminum cans, and you turn them into mirrors, and you reflect sunlight. And they've shown you can do this. This is in Freetown, Africa. They've cooled this town by putting these mirrors over the town. And, you know, we have an amount of the planet that we can cover with these mirrors to lower the temperature. It's temperature that we have to deal with. This is called global warming. Anyway, you heard my side note. That's my pitch. That's what you have to listen to as an advertisement for my hopefully enjoyable, beneficial talk on bovine leukemia viruses. All right, AJ, I'm all yours.
Okay, let's, so are we at risk if we don't eat any animal products?
What are you going to risk?
I mean,
No,
yeah, so it's not like something we can catch if we avoid animal products.
This is really important, AJ, because it brings me back to 1978. When I first got interested in putting together a diet that would help my sickest patients, which is what I put together. You know, the diet I designed would be to help somebody who's lost 90% of their heart function. 90% of their kidneys are gone. But what I figured out is that, you know, 90% of the population needs that diet, because tomorrow it could be a heart attack for you, who you think you're perfectly well. And then you have lost 90% of your heart function. Or tomorrow you could find a lump in your breasts, or, you know, you could discover colon cancer. You know, so tragedy's right around the corner for almost everybody. 91% of people are overweight. Too fat for their health. This is for everybody. So a diet that I once put together as the best possible diet to allow you to have your most function, best feelings, and looking your best is a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables. I didn't compromise at all. But AJ, what I did was this, and this is why your question I can answer with fond memories, is I started out with a starch-based diet. In other words, the center of the diet was rice, corn, potatoes, wheat, etc., starches. All right, sweet potatoes, etc. That was the center of the diet. How much? 90%. Let's just say 90%. And added some fruits and vegetables to it. Maybe it's 70% starch. I don't know. Close. And then what I asked was this question, is how would I make the diet better or worse by adding various foods to it? And if it turned out I'd make the diet worse, the overall impact would be worse, I'd leave it out. And so when we come to dairy, okay, why would we want to consume dairy? Well, to get protein. We'll get plenty of protein from these vegetables, plus the protein causes autoimmune diseases and allergies, and is involved more than vegetable protein for causing heart disease and cancer. You know, so why would I want cow protein? Okay, calcium. Well, there's never been a case of calcium deficiency ever described on any natural diet, so don't have to worry about that. Okay, what's the downside if I add this food? Well, there's bovine leukemia viruses, there's constipation, there's saturated fat, you know, goes on and on and on. Everything came out negative. So I did the same thing with, say, adding beef. Okay, what are the positives here? Oh, you get zinc. Well, how many cases of zinc deficiency have been described in the entire world literature? As far as I can see, I found a population in Iran where they got zinc deficiency if they ate unleavened bread. But if they leavened the bread, in other words, some type of heating process, they released the zinc from its complex in the starches they were eating, and the zinc deficiency disappeared. That's the only case I can find. So I'm not worried about zinc deficiency, even though you're promoting in your ads beef and dairy industry, or beef industry primarily. How about iron? Well, you know, vegetables are loaded with iron, and it's very readily absorbable iron. So that's never a problem. Okay, what do I add negative? Well, kill cows. That's not such a good idea. Pollute the planet. That's not a good idea. Breast cancer in 1 out of 6 women, prostate cancer in 1 out of 6 men, heart attack, strokes in half the population. I don't think I'm going to add that to my starch-based diet. How about fish? I went through the fish thing. Omega-3 fats. Well, omega-3 fats are made by plants. I don't need the fish with all the methyl mercury. I can tell how much fish you eat by just biopsying your body tissues, see how much methyl mercury is in your body. So fish don't make it. Okay, what about, I just couldn't add anything that wasn't of deleterious effects with no benefit from the animal food industry. You try it. You get your favorite dietitian to try it. And they'll come to the same, if they're honest, if they are knowledgeable enough, they'll come to the same, and I'll show them, I'll point out where they're lacking, just like I just did. You know, you're fine. AJ, every person ought to be able to answer a question. Just like you can answer your question of what does my racehorse eat? What's the best diet for my racehorse? How about my kitty cat? What's the best diet for my kitty cat? How about my snake? What's the best diet? You know, you don't feed your snake peanuts. You know, you don't feed your well, I had a cat that ate snakes, so that's not true. You don't, anyway, you get the point. Everybody should be able to answer this question. What is the diet for human beings? But they say, well, you need anything, just a wide variety. Eat from the basic four. Well, you know, some people say don't eat any plants at all, and other people say eat all plants. But there's got to be there must be an answer to that question. And every person from preschool on should be able to answer that question. It is your duty to find out as a responsible parent, teacher, medical doctor, dietitian, to answer that question. What is the best diet for a human being? It's got to be out there, just like for a racehorse or a Gila monster. They like biting people. I actually saw a Gila monster bite running around last night on a TV show. They're real. You know, Gila monsters, that's the source of your Ozempics, the Wegovy's, all those GLP-1. They came from the bite of a Gila monster. I don't think a Gila monster has a diet of people. I really don't. They just get mad when they get disturbed. All right, we're getting silly now. Come on, AJ.
Well, Diane, who's watching live, says, how do kids when they're so young get leukemia?
Well, kids when they're so young drink milk, and their mothers drink milk, and they're breastfed. This virus infects the breast milk. I have no doubt. I haven't looked it up, but I have no doubt. Well, it infects cow's milk. Why wouldn't it infect mother's milk? So you're going to be feeding your kid, if you consume dairy when you're pregnant, just like the cow feeds her calf leukemia viruses, you're going to feed leukemia viruses to your offspring. I wonder what they do in the medical business with women who have leukemia. I wonder if they tell them not to breastfeed or not. That's just something I could look up. I don't know, but it's a thought, because that human leukemia virus is being spread into an intestinal tract that is wide open. That's the thing about a infant's intestinal tract. It's just wide open to absorb things in many ways. And would it be more susceptible to a virus at that young age? Has anybody studied that? No, maybe I'll look it up. Anyway, for those of you who don't know how to find the research, you go to the National Library of Medicine. Okay, just look it up, National Library of Medicine. You look up your article there, and any of the articles that I cited in the bottom right-hand corner, which they're all there. Look them up. I put them there. I put a lot of work into it for you, for us, so that we could, go out with a well-informed force of people to change the world. Anyway, you go to the National Library of Medicine, you look it up, you find something called the Digital Object Identifier, DOI. And you take that number and you put it into another website called Sci-Hub, SCI-HUB. And you'll get all articles before 2022, the year 2022. And you can get half the articles since then, just by going to the National Library of Medicine. You can download the whole article. So you have access to this information if you have the slightest amount of interest. I particularly am talking to my colleagues or dietitians or scientists out there. You've got to be interested in these topics. Show me I'm wrong. I'm pliable. I'll change. If I'm telling you something that's not true, just let me know. Just let me know. Just like on last Sunday night, I had the number of cows that they've tested, the cow-sheep pairs. I added them up wrong. I said there were 25. And actually, when I did my math again, I added them wrong. It was only 23. 23 one cow, one sheep, or no. Let's see. Yeah, one cow, one sheep tested. Not one cow, no one sheep. Infected cows to different numbers of sheep. And anyway, when they got inoculated with pasteurized milk, they didn't get infections, or they didn't get leukemia. But when they were inoculated with unpasteurized milk, they all got infections. That's it. That's the research. That's all. 23 cow, inoculates 23 sheep. That's 23 sheep. That's what it is. Got inoculated, and now you're supposed to say it's okay to feed your kids something that once had bovine leukemia virus in it, intact, and now likely has some fragments of bovine leukemia virus. Unless, of course, you live in Finland or New Zealand. Hey, there's an idea. Your country has killed off the viruses, or the cows that had the viruses. Cost them a lot of money, I bet.
People are asking, well, what about goat's milk?
Same problem. Sheep, goats, chimpanzees, they easily cross the species barriers. So same problem. So that's one reason to consume almond milk or soy milk or rice milk. Or you don't want to consume these animal foods. They're dangerous.
Dr. McDougall,
It's just the emotional impact. If you've ever known a child with leukemia, if you've ever seen them suffer and die, it just the image that would cause you to throw all the dairy out of your pantry, in your refrigerator, even if the chance was 1 in a million that your relative would get this terrible disease. Makes no sense, but the infection rate's pretty high. What did I tell you? 90% of the herds are infected. It spreads. Whether it causes leukemia or not is another story. What did I tell you? 1/3 of the people have live leukemia viruses in their cells. So it spreads easily, whether it manifests itself as leukemia or not, depending upon your health. And by the way, whether or not you express this infection as leukemia, I believe, is dependent upon your health. And if you're a healthy person, then you're more likely to resist the transformation of this virus into an actual leukemia. And the way you be healthy is you fix the problem. And the problem is the food. So you eat a starch-based diet, fruits and vegetables. So even if you are infected, the chance of this infection of being translated into leukemia, I believe, will be much less. I believe that. Is there research to show that? No. I mean, good grief, they've only tested 23 sheep. That's it. Maybe there's more out there. Maybe you can find me another sheep or two. Give the dairy industry a little more backing for their message. You don't have to worry about the leukemia virus. I don't talk about them. If I was the dairy industry, why don't you folks look it up on their website? If I was the dairy industry, I wouldn't even mention bovine leukemia viruses. But they've dealt with it, by the way, in research. You go to the National Library of Medicine, you can deal with it. And they made comments. Doctors have.
Dr. McDougall, will you take questions not on this topic?
Yeah, for a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I love talking to your audience.
Thank you. No, they because we didn't know what the topic was when we announced it on our newsletter, so they sent in some questions not on this topic, but I hope you'll answer them. Thank you. Like this one,
if I know the answer,
I think you will actually. This one from Jackie, and she says, "Please ask Dr. McDougall, if two people who have the exact same diet, could it be possible that one could gain more weight than the other because of their metabolism? Can two people with the same diet lose or gain differently because of their genetics or other factors?"
A little bit, but not a lot. Remember Jack Sprat, who ate no fat, his wife could eat no lean? That's the problem. It's not genetics. And why can I say that? Well, I'm old enough to remember when there were no fat Asians. Back in 1980, there were 2 billion people living in the Asian part of the world. No fat people. You could look at I had this opportunity because I was involved in the Vietnam conflict, fortunately peripherally. And we'd see newsreels of people in Vietnam, 100,000 people, or Thailand or Cambodia. And no fat people, 100,000 people. So the genetic variability is small, to say the least, but it's there. But not to the point where one person becomes obese and the other one becomes rail thin. No, I wouldn't expect that. You may end up being a few pounds heavier. You may store fat a little more efficiently, but not to the point where anybody would recognize you as being unhealthy. Not on a starch-based diet.
Yeah.
You cannot be unhealthy on a starch-based diet. You could try, but you can't. You'll have residual from your past evil ways, but as far as your present health, you can't flourish disease on potatoes. Just doesn't grow well. Disease doesn't grow well when you eat potatoes.
One of the live viewers is saying, well, what are starches? Which grains and which vegetables are starches?
Well, that's the list we could probably list 10,000 starches if you went through the history of their presence on planet Earth now and in the past. But what we're talking about is common foods. The most common starches are rice, wheat, potatoes, and corn. Those are the big four. Yeah, they're the big four. And then after that, you have lots of other things, bulgur and wild rice and sweet potatoes and and then you turn your breads into pastas and whole grain breads, and there are lots of different starches that you're familiar with, but the most common ones are potatoes and corn and wheat and rice. That's what most of the world lives on. Potatoes are my favorite and Chef AJ's favorite. I just love. I never sit down to a potato and say, I wish I had something else to eat. It may have been looking forward to something else, but I never go, oh, darn, I have to have another potato. I just get out some fresh salsa and put it over the top, and oh, man, I'll tell you, give me one more potato.
Regular potato or sweet potato?
Well, I'm kind of a regular potato guy. I think because I was raised in the Midwest, AJ, and that was our only starch, pretty much our only starch. Well, bread, pasta, or bread, wheat was, but mostly we were a meat and potatoes type family. So we ate a lot of potatoes, or not enough, but we ate some.
Nice. This question from Sarah is about.
I guess maybe could I just expand on a little bit? You'll find all kinds of starches out there. The way you recognize a starch is it has enough calories to get you through your daily activity, whereas non-starchy vegetables like lettuce and celery and broccoli and kale and cauliflower, there's not enough calories, there's not enough sugar in them. No sugar, starch is sugar. They're mostly fat and protein, and there are hardly any calories at all. And they just can't sustain life. I'd have to eat like 11 to 22 pounds of cabbage a day to get enough calories. So that's the difference between starches. They're abundant in sugar in complex forms called starch. Always safe. It's the human source of calories. You are a starch eater, a starchivore, a starchitarian. Get with it. Get in control. Stop wasting your life in doctor's offices, taking drugs, feeling poorly. You have a lot of health to regain. Anyway, we'd like to help you do it too. I don't know what book Mary's given away or Heather's given away this month. She was up until it was Women's Month last month, so she was giving away the women's book. And I think she's always given away, I don't know. Anyway, I go to the website and see what free books are available this month. You never know, she might not have taken them down. You get a few of my original books, which are my best. Well, you know, in some ways they're my best. So also we're running an interesting talk here. I think it's the 10th of April. One that I've done over the last 2 years. It's taken me 2 years to do this talk, AJ. And it's titled something about sex and personal appearance or something like that. I don't know, but it's about sex. So we ought to get you interested in personal appearance. And if you're one of our followers, you're signed up for our mailing list, you'll get an invitation. It's only to McDougall people that we do this talk. It's on, I believe, the 10th of April. So we're doing that. And then the following month in May, sometime in May, we're doing the whole GI series, gastrointestinal tract. And then in May, we have another 12-day program. So if you're tired of being sick, tired of not being in control, you know, or tired of wasting your money on drugs that probably don't do you any good, or at least do you more harm than good, give us a try. Give us a try. You know, I just have this temptation, like the used car salesman, to say, give us a try, guaranteed. I know that carries a kind of a silly note with it. So I won't say guaranteed, but you know what? It's pretty darn unusual that somebody doesn't come out of our program in better shape than when they went in, a lot better shape. Not just thinking they're better. Oh, I got to be better. I took this supplement. I believe I'm better. I spent $40 taking this supplement. You will know you're better. It'll be objective. It'll be obvious in 12 days. Anyway, we'll run that program too. So we're doing a lot of things, a lot of things to help people. YouTube, our channel is really important. So I encourage you to go there.
Okay. All right. Well, Sarah would like to know if you could please advise her on the best water filter system for a countertop. She has Berkey, but they are back ordered.
Well, you know, I don't know. What is our true AquaTrue? We have one called AquaTrue, which we like. We've had it for, well, about 4 years, so it's still running well. But I'm, you know, who am I to recommend a water filter system? That's what they ask, water filter or water cooler?
Water filter.
Water filter. That's what we use. But I put a little research into it to find out what I wanted, but primarily, it probably came down to what fit on my countertop, not which is the best filter.
That's funny. Okay. Okay. So this person is saying, this may fire up Dr. McDougall, but why does someone like Jeff Nelson think climate change is a hoax?
I have no idea. You know, I have no idea why we live in such a divided society, and I'm not going to get into it. It'll serve me no good to get into politics. But I'm sure on both sides of the fence, people can't understand it. I mean, I see it the way other people think. And I don't know. I mean, I look at some of the things that are being said, some of the things that are being done, and I just can't believe it. I would have never even imagined in my earlier years that such a thing could happen, or people could talk about each other in the ways that they do, or make threats or violence. I never pictured that. I think most people never did, but it's happened. So, you know, I don't know why Jeff Nelson, you know, in many ways, Jeff and I are much aligned, but I don't think we are in terms of politics.
Thank you. Here's an interesting question from Luana. If we stopped eating meat and dairy, will the virus eventually leave, or do we successfully fight it off, or does it remain?
Don't know. But I have to assume that a healthy body is better able to defend itself than a sick body. And I look at the difference in bodies, you know, compared to a patient, say, that eats a starch-based diet versus somebody that, you know, went to Taco Bell and then McDonald's and then to Burger King. I mean, that's their whole meal plan. You know, I look and I ask myself, which one is most likely to contain this virus? The healthy body or the rotund, sickly looking, gray, lethargic fast food giant eater? You know, I mean, It's just deductive reasoning. It's logic, makes sense. So anyway, no, I don't have, there's no research done on this. You can't, I mean, good grief, you ask for research done on that. They've tested to see whether pasteurization works on 23 sheep. That's it. That I can find, correct me if I'm wrong. I'd like to see that they've done a study, a randomized controlled trial, where they took 100, 100 kids or maybe more, and fed them. Now you won't do that to human children. I don't know. I'd have to think about what the study would be that would be ethical and still be convincing data. You can't do that kind of experiment on people. It'd be very unethical.
So there's another viewer that's saying, is leukemia or lymphoma likely to show up in somebody who quit milk a long time ago, and if they're only eating plants now?
Well, the antibodies might. The antibodies are produced by the immune system. It's just like if you get chickenpox when you're 3 years old, when you're 60, you still have the antibodies. So they may have the antibodies, which could mean that you contacted a dead virus in a thoroughly cooked piece of meat or properly pasteurized milk. You're just reacting to a fragment of dead virus, or a dead virus without fragments. So all it's saying is that your body had once been exposed to this virus. And so 74% of people have been exposed to this virus based on finding antibodies to this virus in their blood. But then when I showed you the next slide, what I showed you is about a third of people actually have live virus in their cells. And I gave you the research. I gave you each and every article from each and every country that looked at the presence of live virus in the cells of people. And it turns out to be, 30, 40%. So yeah, are you infected? Likely. Can you kill the virus? More likely if you're healthy than if you're not healthy. That's the best I can do. And as I say, only 74,000 people a year get leukemia, so it's not like everybody gets it. Only 30,000 or 25,000 die or 20. Anyway, it's body's tough. A good grief, it's amazing what it puts up with.
Someone's asking, if you get the virus, do you have it for life?
Yeah, you have it for life.
You have it for life. Okay, thanks. And then somebody else is asking, is meat and dairy consumption going down at all?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up to see whether it's going down. I suspect, I think my memory says that at least the dairy industry is suffering from people getting the truth. I don't know about, I don't keep track of what is happening with industries. That's common knowledge in the newspaper all the time. My goal would be to just have everybody informed. I don't want to legislate what you do if you're over 21, but everybody needs to be informed. Back when I was a young man, I didn't have proper information on tobacco. There were baseball players and top models advertising cigarettes. They even had doctors, in their exam room advertising Camels. More physicians smoke Camels than any other cigarette. So I didn't have the knowledge necessary to make a decision. And as a result, I have 20-pack years of destruction in my life. Okay, all I really hope is that people have enough correct information about the food that they can make a decision. If you want to kill yourself at Pizza Hut, go ahead and do it, but be informed. I don't find many people, no matter what your politics are, believing that smoking cigarettes is good for you. But of course, I get surprised every day. Who knows? Maybe tomorrow they'll say so. Anyway, if we can all come to a consensus, there are not facts and alternative facts, folks. There are facts. If we can all come to a consensus on facts and the public is informed, like we start teaching it in preschool, And it's a major required college course, high school, junior high, elementary. It's a required course on what a human being eats and why. I could teach such a class. I'd make it one of the most popular classes on campus. But I'd make it required just in case. Anyway, yeah, when you all have the facts on food, then I feel like I could sit back and done my job. But right now you're being lied to. Same thing in the medical business. When you have the truth about medical care, pills and potions and devices and so on, then my job's done. You want to have your breast amputated? Be my guest. Just understand that it's never been shown to improve survival. It's mutilating. Go ahead, have fun. You're over 21. In fact, this does come up seriously. I'm kind of making a joke out of it, but it does come up, AJ, is that people make choices, like when it comes to breast cancer. I remember Nancy Reagan, our first lady, got breast cancer, and she elected to have a mastectomy. And she got tremendous criticism. In fact, it was headlines that she set back the surgical treatment of breast cancer by 10 years, a lumpectomy versus mastectomy. She did not choose a lumpectomy, but then she gave her reasons why. She said, I just got to get over this. I've got work to do as first lady. I can't be bothered with a recurrence, and local recurrences are more common if you just do a lumpectomy. Not if you do a careful one, but if you do a regular lumpectomy. So, I understand her decisions. She was well informed. And the same thing with what you choose to eat or any medical care. But you got to have the real facts, not the alternative facts, not the ones created by industry to make money or to support people's egos or power. The truth's the truth. Truth is simple and easy to understand, and it doesn't change.
Thank you, Dr. McDougall. There's a question from Randy, and she is asking, where did it go? Come on. Okay, my son-in-law wants to give my 3-year-old granddaughter raw milk. He thinks it'll be healthy for her, and he won't allow her to get vaccines. Any suggestions?
I just find that people's minds are very difficult to change, particularly in this time and age. So I would say your best tool to cause some change in these relatives is to show them the presentation that I just did. And then there's another presentation. It's on my website. It's May 2003. It's called Marketing Dairy and Disease. And it's the next step. It talks about the things that dairy does to infants. You start out in life with formula, which is made of cow's milk. Well, there's alternative milk too, but soy milk. So you start out in life feeding them the wrong diet, and you continue to do that. The kids continue to get sick. So yeah, it's just a matter of having the truth out there, and whether you convince people or not about things. I'm more discouraged every day, but it has to do it has to do with medicine too. I started this whole thing out back in the early 1970s, before 1976, I guess. Thinking that, people would really get excited about what I discovered. I honestly, and, you call me naive, but I thought people would be lining up at my office door to hear about this miracle. You could cure so many problems and prevent pretty much all of them. Not pretty much. Let's just say 80, 90%. I thought that my colleagues would be thrilled. Good grief. They wanted to cure TB and scurvy, and they're always trying to cure everything. Well, here's the cure. I put it together, not my work, but it's other people's work. I didn't design this. I'm not the originator of this. It doesn't come to me as a message from God. This is a message that's spread out through a long period of time of science and research and observations for actually thousands of years. really intensely over the last 150 or 25 years. But anyway, just you get the facts and get the truth, and then you decide. Take your risk where you want to. And the other thing I tell people is I don't live a perfect life. I'm good grief. Sometimes I forget to put my safety belt on. Not often. And I wear my helmet when I go skiing. I don't wear a life jacket when I windsurf, but I should. Yeah, it's my choice. I don't wear a helmet. Well, I wear a helmet when I windsurf, and I don't wear a life vest. My choice. Smart person would wear a life vest too, especially where I used to go.
This question from Jill, I've heard before, and maybe you have too, Dr. McDougall. And she's saying, I'm just not satisfied unless there's meat. If I make a vegetable soup, I love vegetables, but if there's no meat in it, it's just not satisfying to me. If I get a vegetable chow mein versus a chicken chow mein in a Chinese restaurant, I'm just not satisfied. If it's just vegetables, I don't know if I could ever get used to not having a filling protein in my diet.
I understand. I really do. We used to call this the Chinese restaurant because back in my dark days, back before I discovered the truth and was enlightened, I of course went to Chinese restaurants and I felt the same way. In fact, I could even order one with chicken or beef. They just didn't put enough in to make me satisfied. Put too many vegetables, too much rice. I didn't feel satisfied. Where was that lump of meat and that glob of fat that I'm used to? It wasn't there. So what I discovered, and didn't take me long, is that you adapt. You get used to filling up your stomach with starch, and you get all of the sensations. And the research shows that satiety, in other words, how long after a meal do you say, I feel full, is far greater with starches than it is with animal foods. All right, so a couple of things you can do. One is you must realize first and most importantly, you cannot eat the same volume of food you used to. You will starve. If you look at your plate and you go, well, in this new starch-based diet, I'll just eat the same size plate I used to eat with the meat and stuff. Ain't gonna work. You get 2 or 3 plates of this food. That's what you do. So that's going to take a long sense of satisfying your sense of lacking. Is fill up the stomach, and it's going to take more food. All right, our food is calorie dilute. That's what helps keep thin. So you eat 2 or 3 plates of food instead of 1. You can also gravitate to more dense foods that you are used to. First of all, pick things that you're used to. In other words, if you're from the Midwest, maybe it's potatoes. You're from California, Hawaii, it's maybe rice. You're from an Italian community, it could be pastas. Pick a starch that you're used to. That'll be more satisfying to you than going on to some foreign starch. Then you can go to more dense foods. And I think the first one would, well, all of them are beans. But the first one would be regular old beans like navy and white and kidney, et cetera. They're really solid when you bite into them and give you that kind of sensation that you're missing with that lump of muscle and that glob of fat. And tofu would be another example, but that's even more refined protein. See, with tofu, it starts out with the soybean being fairly high in protein. It's about 40% protein. And then they precipitate they precipitate out. They precipitate out with calcium chloride. Mary, what do they precipitate out when they make tofu? Does the carbohydrate come out? I forget.
I haven't made it.
Forget.
So.
But I should know. It's a lapse of memory. Anyway, it increases the protein. It must be some of the carbohydrate is precipitated out because the increase in protein, it goes up to 52% from 40%. Oh, excuse me, fat. The fat content goes up from 40% to 52%. I don't know what happens to the protein content, but tofu is the point I was trying to make. I don't have to know the protein content. I can look it up later. The point I was trying to make is your tofu dishes, just plain tofu is more solid and meaty looking and tasting, etc., than most of your other bean dishes. And then you turn them into things that maybe more hardy, like miso, or tempeh. Tempeh would be one that's more solid. You know, that's what I would do. Eat more food, eat familiar food, hit the beans heavy. You'll be okay. Just takes a short time. Now, like, for example, you know, there was a transition time when I would go home and I'd have turkey for Thanksgiving. That was the only meat I ate for the year. Now it's none. I skip Thanksgiving turkey. But that's not your business, whether I eat it or not. But I always felt unsatisfied. The turkey just didn't do it. So I know you can adjust and just keep at it. And I would also tell you to do it 100%. Don't do it by gradually cutting down. It's just so torture. You know, nobody quits alcohol or cigarettes by slowly cutting down. You gotta make the break. You gotta say, look, I'm a smoker today, and tomorrow I'm not. I'm a drunk today, tomorrow I'm not. You know, I'm a garbage eater today, and tomorrow I won't be. I'm gonna eat a starch-based diet. You go 100%. You suffer a little. You know, change has an element of suffering with it. Big deal. When you get on the other side of suffering, you look back, I guarantee it. Just like with alcohol and smoking or other things you've changed. Spouses, you've gotten rid of a spouse. You said, I wish I'd done that a long time ago. You will say that way about the food. I wish I'd have done that a long time ago.
Okay, thank you. And here's a question from an Instagram viewer named Artfully Plant-Based. A patient presents with kidney infection. What is your first thought that you should recommend to the patient to eat?
First thing I do is make sure they go to the doctor right away. You know, this is serious. You know, there's some type of blockage in there, like maybe a kidney stone or something else going on. Or there's a source of bacteria that need to be dealt with. You know, you go see the doctor. Don't mess around with your diet. No, I don't think I should answer the question.
No.
There's no special food to eat when you like if you get somebody sticks a knife in your heart. What food should I eat if I got a knife stuck in my heart, doctor? Would it be better if I ate sweet potatoes or rice? No, you get to the emergency room, you get the knife out of your heart, and it's sewed up. That's what you do. Didn't mean to make fun of your question, but.
Yeah. Well, Dr. McDougall, I keep thinking about your answer to the previous question from the person that's unsatisfied without meat. Is it the protein, or is it really the fat that they're seeking?
Well, you know, beans are very low in fat. They're only about 4% fat. You know, tofu would be like 50% fat. But I find, maybe it's just me, I find beans very, very hearty and satisfying. You know, maybe it's because I was used to eating beans when I grew up. Maybe it's just a familiar food to me. But, you know, I relate it to them being more compact, more dense, you know, something to chew into. And boy, you can make some grain and bean burgers that once you put the ketchup and mustard and relish on them, you wouldn't miss anything. You get done with what we just had. Mary's going to talk about it on one of our Sunday night. We're on 5 o'clock every Sunday on our McDougall channel live. And I believe next Sunday, Mary's going to talk about some really, really great burgers that we discovered at, I believe they're at Whole Foods. Are they at Whole Foods, Mary?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're at Whole Foods.
What are they called?
Zucan. Well, I'm not going to tell you until 5 o'clock on Sunday night.
Okay. All right.
I don't know, AJ. She
Okay.
and Mary would have to look it up. But she'll show you the packages. But when you get done with one of these burgers, I mean, good grief, except for the blood dripping down your cheek, you wouldn't know much difference. Can you imagine having grain juice running down your lips? I don't know. I don't think so. There's no grain juice, folks.
So Diane says, well, what about dementia from all that starch and sugar?
Silly. You know, there's the whole talk I give on dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is caused by aluminum poisoning. So it's another one of those travesties where you're not told the truth. But you know, I gave you the research. I gave you the research. Now it's up to you to look it up. I did the hard work. Not only did I find it for you, I evaluated it as far as its impact goes. Is this true or not? Is this supported by the bulk of other research or not? Now, I don't mean just opinion. I'm talking about hard science. And the things that I've shared with you come up positive in every aspect. It's the truth. And you won't find a dissenting opinion that has any value. I guarantee it, because I've looked at them. But it's up to you. Prove me wrong. How many times have I been saying that for the last 10 years on your show, AJ? Prove me wrong. I'm waiting. Come on, you tough oncologists and cardiologists and diabetologists, and prove me wrong.
Yep.
You're just too busy going to the bank. I know. Paying your bills. Learning all the new stuff. The new and useless bits of information. I have seen, and I've been at this for more than a half a century, AJ, and I have to tell you, the amount of change that has resulted in benefit for people has been so minimal over the last half century. They're really beneficial treatments. Let me see if I can think of any. Breast cancer, no. Let's see, heart disease, not over the last half century. Let's see. I just can't figure out where we made progress. The new vaccines, boy, you get a lot of argument out there. I'm not going to get into that one right now, except I do believe in vaccines, just not the COVID or the flu vaccines. Medical treatment really hasn't advanced civilization. What's advanced civilization is better nutrition, better sanitation, and vaccination. If you want to improve the whole lot of humanity, those are the only three things that have done that. No medical treatment has. Well, I had one article that pointed out maybe the treatment of syphilis has. But that's it. That's the history of medicine. Yeah, we got a lot of new treatments out there, but do they result in more good than harm? Most of them not. They do more harm than good, and you should know that. And the research proves it. It's not contradictory.
Dr. McDougall, have you heard of phytate supplements, which is a big buzz in the reputable MS community? Marianne would like to know.
What are they called?
Phytate supplements. She says it's a big buzz in a reputable MS community. And what is your opinion on it?
I don't know, but I can tell you, I can't think of any supplement that would be good for MS. Nor would I give a very positive note to the current therapies for MS. They're terrible. Interferon beta, a whole bunch of them out there, the new treatments. They're terrible. Nothing, if you really understood the full impact, that you'd want to be, at least put them on your top list of things to do. What you put on your top list of things to do would be to read Roy Swank's work. Roy Swank. He was the head of neurology at Oregon Health and Science University for 23 years. Published 176 papers. And what he told you is you can stop MS with a low-fat diet. Read the research.
Okay.
If you read the research on this supplement, if there any exists, or you read the research on the drugs like interferon beta, you'll find it's extremely disappointing, especially when it comes to your future, how long you're going to live, and how mobile you'll be. How much of your mobility will be left when it comes to MS. I'm not going to give the statistics because they're just frightening. What happens to people within 5, 10, and 20 years that have MS.
Okay.
Fix the food, fix your diet. Good grief. What could be easier?
Okay. This person is asking about whether or not they can lose fat and not get muscle atrophy. She says she's 70 years old, 5'5", 115 pounds, and a strict starchivore, as she has to maintain her weight at 1,400 calories a day, but she'd like to lose more weight. Why would somebody that's 115 at 5'5" need to lose any weight?
I mean, the body protects itself from starvation. So you know, the way you keep muscle mass, you know the answer to that. Come on. It's not by eating protein. I know the beef industry and the egg industry and dairy industry, they publish research suggesting that. No evidence that it really does. But, you know, telling you their opinion coming from the protein industries is that if you eat more animal foods, you'll prevent sarcopenia. And the ones that sell supplements, they have the same kind of opinion, not the facts. Facts is taking extra protein does not build muscle. What builds muscle? What builds muscle? Come on, what builds muscle? Exercise. Yeah. Oh, I didn't want to hear that. Doc, I wanted to hear it was some special supplement I could take, or if I just ate this kind of food. Don't tell me I have to exercise. You have to exercise.
Thank you. A lot of people are talking on the chat about soy, and because you had mentioned tofu and tempeh, and you know, they're worried about the hormones, especially if they're men.
Well, you don't have to worry about the hormones, except in a positive way. You know, I think the minimal amount of evidence that's out there is positive for the soy protein. You know, when it comes to breast cancer, I have 2 studies that looked at the survival in women with breast cancer based on how much tofu they ate. And both of them are positive. In other words, they ate more tofu, they live longer. Not a lot of research, and not enough for me to recommend that people eat tofu as part of their treatment for breast cancer. But if you ask me, can I eat tofu? The answer is yes. You know, if you have breast cancer. Can I eat it if I don't have breast cancer? The answer is yes. No, but it's not a powerful enough decision that I really would want to even bother addressing it for most people, because they would interpret it. They would say, oh, now what I need to do is just eat more tofu. That's what Dr. McDougall said. No, that's not what he said. What he says, so far the evidence doesn't show any harm, and the limited amount of evidence there is encouraging, but not to the level where I make this a major part of my shift in dietary recommendations. No, you eat a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables. You want to eat tofu, fine. But it's not part of the requirement that if you have breast cancer, you must eat tofu.
Okay. Something about, what do you do about chronic Epstein-Barr virus?
I don't have any idea. I don't know of any antiviral drugs that treat it. It's a chronic infection. It's related to developing Burkitt's lymphoma in Africa, mononucleosis in the United States. I believe there's an association with that. Anyway, you guys are stretching my memory. We don't have any really effective. Well, we're doing pretty well with the HIV drugs, so maybe there's some progress being made. I don't know of anything you can do about Epstein-Barr, other than, like I tell you, a healthy body's more likely to be able to deal with these injuries and infections more efficiently than as a unhealthy person due to the typical American diet. It just makes sense.
Yvonne says, I'm 72 and I've been whole food plant-based for 5 years. I just recently started with high blood pressure and high cholesterol. My doctor wants me to put me on meds for both. What can I do? You can take the McDougall program next month. That's what you can do.
Yeah. As my flight instructor used to say, when I wanted to invest $2,000 or $10,000 in my airplane to buy instruments for safety, he would say to me, John, how much is your life worth? And then I buy the instrument. The same thing I ask you, how much is your life worth? Well, hopefully it's worth enough to make the changes that we're talking about. So,
You're going to love this question. And we did a whole talk on that, and it's fantastic. Chris says, if my dad had colon cancer, should I have a colonoscopy?
well, the reason you should have a colonoscopy is because mom and dad taught you how to eat and what foods to like. So your risk of colon cancer because of the education that you receive, not because of bad genes. Yeah, even if it was bad genes, you can't change it. That's why you must believe it's your education, because you can change that. So yeah, there's an association between family and your risk of getting various kinds of cancer. But the common denominator is the food. And maybe genes are as important, but who cares? You can't change them. So deal with things you can change. Your diet definitely needs to be improved. After all, what would you expect causes your colon to get sick? You think anything you put in it would cause it? Huh? Or you think it's some type of moonbeam out here that's giving you colon cancer? Huh? No, it's the food. You know, you chew it up, swallow it, goes through your intestine, man, guess what? The remnants end up in your colon. And they grow bacteria that love to make cancer-causing substances. And they avoid any protective effects when it comes to cancer. The remnants of the food, they're just deficient. So, you know, it's the food. I mentioned that.
Yep. Nice. I am 71 years old, whole food plant-based for 2 years. Is there a way to detox mercury and other heavy metals?
Don't eat them. Don't eat them. That's it. You know, as far as cleansing programs, you know, that's something I haven't thought about or dealt with in a long time. But if you're going to cleanse your body, you need to get stealth thin, starvation camp thin, because these chemicals are stored in your body fat. So you need to get down to the scarecrow weight, where people look at you and laugh or worry about you, because you got to get rid of all that body fat to detoxify. That's where the chemicals are in your body fat. So if you want to clean out your body, lose weight, and then replenish your system with clean food. You know, eat low on the food chain. Of course, that's number one. Buy organic foods. That's number two. Eat simple. Do you want to really detoxify? Get down to starvation camp weight. Concentration weight camp. Concentration camp weight. That's pretty thin. You know, and anyway.
What about water fasting?
Well, you'd enter up a concentration camp thin by water fasting. I mean, does water fasting allow the body to release more chemicals than if you weren't fasting? I don't know that. All right, that may be something that Dr. Goldhammer knows, but I'm not aware that the body is more efficient, except for the fact that you lose more fat when you don't eat. So, you know, people who go on water fasts, eventually 60 days later, they're dead.
That's
The
too
body
long.
has 60 days of fat stored in it on average. After that, you're dead. But we have friends out there that have a year and a half. I think a year and a third, I think, is the most I've heard of somebody living without food. The record for fasting. You could probably find a better record.
Right. Nicole says, can children under 6 eat more than a cup of beans? And what about parents a day?
You know, AJ, when I wrote the book called The McDougall Plan back in I think it was 1978, or actually came out in 1983. I wrote it for people who had some of the most serious problems And I wanted it to be the diet that allowed people to feel and function their best. And so I made some adequate or additional restrictions, particularly for people who have kidney disease, liver disease, heart disease, or other serious ailments. And those I noted with, if you look at this book, McDougall plan, with different symbols, like I would note that beans, I put a little bean symbol up there on the recipe that was high protein, a honeybee and the one that was high sugar, salt shaker and the one that was high salt. So I further classified the foods so that people would know that under particular conditions, they really need to drastically reduce the amount of protein or salt or et cetera. And then from that, I thought, well, how about the general population? You know, should they be restricted at all with their protein intake? And I don't know how I came up with the number, a cup or a half a cup a day. But, you know, I decided to make a general recommendation so that people didn't get into protein overload. And what I recommended was a half a cup of beans cooked a day on average. But that was like a cup and a half in 3 days. That's a lot of beans. So it was just kind of a general recommendation. I don't want people, see, what would happen with some people is because they like beans so much, they would make beans the center of their diet. And that's a diet that's 30% protein. You need 3% of your diet as protein. That is a diet that has 10 times as much protein as you need. And we know vegetable protein has deleterious effects on calcium and bone loss. We know that. But, you know, the things that have been tested have been even higher in protein. Not that, I don't know that beans, peas, and lentils have been tested, but isolated protein from, say, wheat, gluten, or seitan, it's called seitan, or from soybeans, isolated soy protein, we know that they have a very deleterious effect on calcium balance, which leads to osteoporosis. So they have twice as the concentration as beans do. They're about 70% protein. Beans are 30%. You need 3%. Do the math. AJ, if you don't have a lot of questions, maybe we should cut it off, right?
Okay, I mean, that made me want to take one more because I did see it.
Sure, let's take one more.
Okay, thank you, Dr. McDougall. This is from.
I probably have them all thinking, what am I going to do with that cheese and milk that I put in my refrigerator now?
Actually, I saw two more, if you wouldn't mind. One of them is probably really quick, but it's from Peter. Is it reasonable to add psyllium to the diet for maximum weight loss to further increase satiety and to lose weight more rapidly?
I don't think so. You know, fiber pills used to be all the rage. And these were pills, you know, they're basically fiber. They're no digestible carbohydrate or other calories in them. And they will fill the stomach up, but they leave you in a matter of minutes with terrible hunger because you haven't changed the hormones that are changed when you eat the food, which result in satiety, the insulin, the ghrelin, etc. A whole bunch of hormones. So you don't make that kind of change when you eat fiber, which is what the psyllium would be fiber. So it may fill your stomach. They've never been popular because people have not accomplished significant weight loss by using this method. That's why you don't hear about it. If it worked, you'd hear about it a lot, especially if it was profitable. So yeah. I don't think it's going to make a big difference. Okay. Will it hurt you? Well, no, I don't think it'll hurt you either.
Last question from Tammy. What do you think of doctors prescribing Ozempic for type 2 diabetes?
I think it's a terrible idea. I think what they ought to prescribe for type 2 diabetic is a starch-based diet because they'll be cured. They'll be cured when they lose the weight. You know, just losing weight and having bariatric surgery, the success rate is about 80% of people are cured. So, you know, why would I recommend Ozempic when their cure is there? Okay, well, what if they have type 1.5 diabetes? In other words, they have some pancreatic insufficiency and they still have problems related to elevated sugar, like excessive urination, excessive thirst, and excessive weight loss. Well, then in that case, I would not prescribe Ozempic. It wouldn't work. Well, it'll work a little bit, but not much. It's kind of insulin producing, but when you have a dead pancreas, I don't know that it pumped much insulin out of a pancreas that was partially injured. But you give us insulin. You give a little long-acting insulin. That's the drug of choice to take care of those symptoms and signs. Weight loss, excessive urination, excessive thirst. And if you're worried about the blood sugar because it's like 250, take a little bit of long-acting insulin. No, I would not recommend Ozempic. Long-acting insulin is like, $35 for a month, right? What does it cost for these drugs? $1,400 a month. What are these drugs? The GLP-1 agonists, semaglutides, which Ozempic is one, so is Wegovy and a couple others are GLP-1 agonists. They take the lust out of life. Not only do you lose your appetite, you lose your interest in sex. You're interested in the finer things in life. It dulls you. It ruins your appetite for everything, not just food. And there are also some significant side effects that happen in people. But the desired effects are bad enough. I can give you a shot of long-acting insulin. You feel great all day. You never have any adverse effects unless you give too much or too little. Well, I could give you Ozempic. What do you do for the day? You spend it kneeling over a toilet bowl, throwing up, because the desired effect of these drugs is to make you sick. They cause nausea and vomiting and diarrhea, and it's a result of Gila monster poisoning. So, why would I make you throw up for month after month? It costs you $1,400 month after month, when I can give you a little shot of insulin and doesn't do any of those things. All positive. If you're a type 1.5 diabetic, in other words, you had partial pancreatic insufficiency, because somebody with a fully efficient pancreas, in other words, somebody who has type 2 diabetes, is cured essentially 100% of the time.
Well, Dr. McDougall, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And we look forward to your talk on April 10th. Make sure you subscribe to Dr. McDougall so that you can be invited to the sex talk.
Let me just, this is really a fun talk now that you reminded me again. This is a talk I put together a couple of years ago. I've been working on it ever since, updating it and so on. It talks about why you're, the importance of being attractive. Why do you want to be attractive? So it talks about that. And it talks about how there are different signs of attractiveness, like being overweight is not a sign of attractiveness. Being sickly looking is not a sign of attractiveness. Your skin color, your body odor are all signs that are either attractive or unattractive. Even the voice, even your tone of your voice, which is changed by food, has to do with attractiveness between, mostly the opposite sexes, but, between the same sexes too. This is just basic attraction between people we're talking about. So that's what we're going to talk about in that discussion on sex and personal appearance.
What time will it be on
Looking
April?
good.
You said it's April 10th, which is a week from tomorrow. What time will that be?
I don't know. 10 o'clock maybe. I don't know. You got to sign up for it. Good grief.
And have you sent it out yet?
You gotta go to the website and get the link.
Have you sent it out yet?
I don't think I've sent it out, but she probably hasn't noticed it.
All right, that sounds great. Thanks so much, Dr. McDougall.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
We'll have a lot of fun. I look forward to putting, this is the first time I've ever given this talk. You've never heard it before. None of it has ever appeared anyplace. Well, a few segments, but not much. It's all new stuff. You've never seen it. You've never heard it. Never been released. I'll be keeping this a secret.
How did you research it? How did you research it?
Oh, National Library of Medicine.
Nice. I was making a joke because it's a talk on sex. So
oh yeah, I mean, did I have more? What I did is I ate meat and asked Mary if I smelled good or
not. That's
the research I did. No, I'm just joking.
Nice. Thanks, Dr.
Anyway,
McDougall.
hope to see you then. Bye-bye. Thank you, AJ.
Bye.
Really appreciate the opportunity. You'll be
Oh,
on
we
the
love,
show.
my audience loves you, and I love my audience. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow at 10 a.m. for Kathy Hester's Vegan Kitchen. She's going to teach you how to make your own hot sauce and mustard. Do you like hot sauce, Dr. McDougall? Are you a spicy? Well, you went away. I like hot sauce, and she's going to make it tomorrow, and it's going to be SOS free for those that don't want the salt. Take care, everyone.